Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between Sessions with Berries. Today's guest is Kimberly Parker, LPC-LCDC, the CEO of Revive to Thrive Wellness Center, a Texas based counseling practice focused on trauma, addiction, life transitions, and self esteem. Kimberly is also a clinical supervisor, doctoral candidate, speaker, and trainer who's passionate about cultural humility and empowering marginalized communities. She brings a bold entrepreneurial spirit to everything she does and is here to talk about breaking free from outdated therapist money narratives, expanding beyond the one-to-one, and building a business that reflects your values and your vision. Kimberly, welcome. We're so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. I'm so excited to be here. And I love this topic. I always remember being in school and hearing like, oh, you're not going to make any money as a therapist. And I'm like, let's not accept that narrative. Like you can live well while helping other people live well. And so I
Nice.
love this topic of between sessions. I love it.
So you already had that mindset, like a lot of us, right? In grad school or whatever, we get dictated to, like you shouldn't make money, you should always take insurance, you should work for community mental health for as long as you can, that sort of thing. So even during like grad school and that sort of thing, you were already like thinking like I don't like this mindset that you're trying to instill in me.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I already felt some like tension that I was like, I wasn't going to accept this. Even hearing things like, oh, you're always going to work at a job that you just feel weighed down by, because of the heaviness of the job. And so narratives that like I just had to accept a low paying job. I had to accept that things were always going to be this way. And I am a disruptor, just by nature. I'm a disruptor. And I was just like, I don't want to accept that narrative. And I did still have some narratives of scarcity connected to like my inner child. So that was
Yeah.
definitely something that I had to overcome and that I'm still kind of in motion with overcoming. But
Mhm.
definitely I always felt tension about this idea of just accept things the way that they are in this field. You're a helper and that's as good as it gets.
I'd love if you could maybe touch on the scarcity mindset. Like, are there things you're doing now to help? It sounds like you are, like you're working on and work in progress as we
Yes.
all are. Are there certain things
Yes.
you found that has really helped you with that mindset shift? Because, I see this all day, every day in the Facebook groups, and people are
Exactly.
like, you can't do that. That's not okay. You can't have a rate of
Yes.
$250. Like, I mean, just on and on and on. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's like Kim, like that's my personal like push my button right there what you said because it just frustrates me especially like when you're yet more novice in this field, you might really accept that's your fate and that's as good as it gets. And so I really like to push up against that and I'll say like what I've done to help is I have surrounded myself with people who are where I want to be. That was kind of a lesson
Mm.
that I learned at a very young age is to connect with people who are where you want to be. So if I know that I want to bring in 7 figures, I even claim 8 figures one day, I have to surround myself with people who are there, who are doing the work. And I would say what really, I almost call it like walking into a portal, so to speak, because I think in life you have these moments that just change your life forever. And I would say one of the moments that changed my life was I want to say it was back in 2022, I want to say. I
Okay.
went to a conference and it was put on by someone who has a book called We Should All Be Millionaires. Rachel Rogers, yes. And seeing so many brown and black folk and folk from marginalized backgrounds who are millionaires and who are 8 figure earners, for me, I think representation is everything. And so it let me know that this is possible. And hearing from them and having conversations with them, people like Arlen Hamilton, who used to be homeless and live in an airport and now is like this amazing, just like amazing. I mean, she's so wonderful and very successful financially in all
Wow.
the things. And so that was something that really started to like churn things for me. And when I declared like that I can have this life, and it feels sometimes, I even talk to some of my friends who feel icky about like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, or oh, I
Hmm.
made a million or $2, and I'm like, go for it, go after it. If that's what you
Yeah.
did and that's who you are, like, don't let other people make you feel bad about wanting to take care of yourself because for me, it's also about legacy. It's about legacy and what I'm able to leave my nieces and nephew. And if I ever have children, and being able to, so the living legacy also, like what I'm doing here on earth, and not just waiting until I'm dead to like pass something on, but to like actually live good and well. So I would say surrounding myself with people who are already there, the different literature that I read on the topic. And I also went to another conference maybe the year after that Arlen put on, and it was called Your First Million. So again, just kind of being in the room with people who believe that this is possible. And yeah, I think that was probably the biggest thing. I'll also say too that your network is your net worth. I believe. I think that you have to be very mindful of who you surround yourself with. And so some people in my life, they'll make fun of me that I don't want them saying things around me like I'm broke and things like that, because I believe that there's
Nice.
power in our words. So I'll hear them correct themselves. I mean, and I'm like, do not claim that. Like there's power in your words. Be mindful with your words. Be intentional with your words, and claim it. And so that's another piece I think too, is just my overall spirituality. Is like, I believe that I can live an abundant life. I don't believe that just because I'm a helper and a servant that I have to live off of pennies. I actually need to live well to do this job well.
Yes, yes. If we're burned out and broke, how are we going to help everybody else?
And that's what I think about with my clients. Like, sure, I am a trauma therapist, but like, if you have no food, we can't really dig into your trauma today. Like, we need to figure out how we
Right.
can get you some food, and then kind of go from there. So yeah, I absolutely believe in living well. And I can't stress that part enough though, Kim, the piece about your community, having people who believe in your delusional dreams or your crazy dreams and things of that nature. That is something that has also been really helpful for me, because some people are dream killers. And some people, I've
Yes.
had people even laugh when I said something about seven figures, and I'm like, you can't be around me
Watch
with that
me.
energy. Exactly. Watch me, and also just don't be in my energy field talking negative like that, because I don't want that. I don't, but you're right. Watch me, you know?
Yeah, I love it. I love that so
Yes.
much. Yeah, I mean, I fully believe that too. It's like the stuff that's coming into us is what we are going to attract in the universe, right? So we're surrounded by
Exactly.
naysayers and like people playing it safe and people
Yes.
with like money mindset issues. Like, how are you going to,
Yes.
you're going to be attracting that from the universe. So, yeah, I
Exactly.
totally agree with what you're saying. It's amazing. Very
Absolutely.
inspirational. And I hope
Thank
anybody listening
you.
goes and checks out everybody you're talking about, including you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you.
So you're a clinician, a
Yes.
supervisor, a
Yes.
speaker, a
Yes.
trainer, now working towards your doctorate.
Yes.
How do you stay grounded while holding all these roles? Because I think, a lot of people might hear that and
Yes.
say, wow, that's so aspirational, but how do I do it? How does she do it? Can you give us
Yes.
some tips around that? Like, how do you stay grounded and successful in all those roles with so much going on?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question, Kim, and I think it's so necessary. I'm going to tell you that like I was in survival mode for a very long time, especially the first 2 years of my doc program. It's a very, very rigorous program, and I know that I'll be the best when I come out. I'm working on my dissertation right now, and so just got a little bit longer. But I was in survival mode, and that led to me getting an autoimmune disease. The stress that I put under my body was terrible. And then meanwhile, in the past maybe year and a half, I've had 4 family members who have been diagnosed with cancer. And
Oh my
so,
gosh.
absolutely. And exactly. And thankfully, they're all in remission, but it's like the body does keep the score. You know what I mean? And I just
Yep.
thinking about these women and how much adversity they've overcome. It's no wonder. I think it's no wonder why their body responded that way and why my body responded that way. And so, starting, I want to say at the beginning of this year, I went on my calendar and I went and blocked off 1 weekend a month, and I called them do not disturb weekends.
Oh, I
And
love that.
absolutely, I call them do not disturb weekends. And I do still work, to be honest with you, during those weekends, but it's like at my own time, in my own way, very leisurely. I don't do a lot of cooking. I'll do takeout, or I'll go to Trader Joe's and get all my favorite things. And I just relax. I don't put on any makeup.
Nice.
I just relax. And so and I already have them set up for 2026. So that's one of the things that I do. I also, at least once a week, I try to take a day just for me because I really need that. And I notice that when I don't get that, I'm pretty irritable and a little bit of a short fuse. So I like to have one day a week that's just all about me because everything I do is in service of others. And so if I can just have a day where I'm just focused on myself, I really enjoy that. And also just trying to find other ways to take care of myself, whether it's through spirituality, whether it's through exercising and trying to treat my body better, being on a health journey over this past maybe 2 years and denouncing the diet culture and really just trying to live better and eat better so that I feel better and can go the distance has been a huge part of it. And then therapy. I have my own therapist, and I'm so grateful to be able to. So I have like a self-care plan. I guess to answer your question, I have a self-care plan that really addresses the mind, the body, and the soul. I will tell you in full transparency, probably this last semester I bit off a little bit more than I could chew. But it was a lesson learned. It was a lesson learned. And now I know that, Kimberly, you gotta say no at some point. And I don't have a problem saying no. It's just that I get passionate about so many things. I think that's the hard part when you're multi-gifted and then you're a Libra on top of that. You just like to do all the things, but it's like, you got to calm down. And what do they say? If you don't focus on one, if you try to focus on everything, you'll get nothing done. And so that's been a lesson I've been trying to reinforce for myself lately.
I love that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Along this journey, when did you realize like you needed to shift from maybe just being a private practice practitioner to out of the one-to-one model? When did you realize that it was time to do that? And maybe you could take us on that journey just a little bit for people listening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good question. So I knew that I always wanted to be a supervisor just because I had a really great supervisors. And so I had two since I was originally working toward becoming a play therapist, although I don't do play therapy anymore. But I always had such great supervisors. And so I knew that I wanted to be a part of like the new generation of counselors coming up. So I knew that. And so going into the doc program, I knew that that was going to prepare me for that because we have a supervision class that we have to take. And then when I was taking the teaching class I want to say that was during the first year with one of my favorite professors ever, I realized how much I love teaching. And that's actually how I started my continuing education leg of my business. Is I had to create a lecture for a class and I created it. And then I was like, I love doing this. I feel so much energy, like so much good energy when I'm doing this. I think I should monetize this,
Yeah,
and
of course.
And my friends will laugh at me because honestly, Kim, I'm always like, let's monetize this. We don't have to monetize everything. I totally get that. But like when I see somebody, especially at my school, there's so many gifted and talented folks there. And I know higher ed does not really pay much. I mean, they don't. I mean, the benefits might be great, but they don't really pay a whole lot. I'm like, you're so smart. Let's monetize this and make you some money so that you can live well. So I really think it's through actually engaging in some of these other practices like teaching. And then that turned into the training, which I think is a lot of one and the same, knowing that I wanted to be a supervisor, but also too, I want to say that I graduated in 2017. And then 3 years later, we were hit with everything that happened in 2020.
Right.
And just seeing clients, 28 clients a week, 30 clients a week, 35 clients a week. I mean, it started taking a toll on me, just a huge, huge toll. And I just said, I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like, this cannot be my only bread and butter for the rest of my life. And even at one point, Kim, I transitioned to a group practice because I thought like, oh, I keep getting so many referrals. That's the next thing that I should be doing. But I quickly realized, even with the best employees, I had the most best employees, that I also wasn't really interested in that either. I'm not, I love cultivating new counselors, but I don't necessarily want to be checking in with people like, did you get your notes done? Or like, it's not really my forte. And so, yeah, but just, I think doing other things, dipping my toe, not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to change my mind, like I did when I went back to solo practice. That is really what did it for me. But then also just, because I am such an empath and the weight sometimes of the world and just what we do, I just realize I cannot do this long term. Also, too, just as far as scalability, I mean, there's only so much money you can make, right, doing one-on-one. And I
Exactly.
knew that I couldn't just end it there.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Could not agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we have
Yes.
the same, we're the same people. It's like
Yes. Yes.
monetize everything, get out of that
Yes.
one-to-one model that's gonna like
Exactly.
kill you. It's like it's hard to
Exactly.
do it for 25 years, 30, 40 years, you know? Yes.
Absolutely, Kim. Absolutely. And I saw somebody recently, and I think this is why we have to be careful who we allow to speak into us. She said, to all the new associates out there, like, just see more clients and then you'll get more experience and then you'll be able to make more money. And I had to interject because to me, I think that is no disrespect to that person, but just terrible advice to tell people just to work harder. I am all about working smarter, not harder. People probably don't believe that since I have like so many things that I do, but like I'm very intentional. If I spend 3 hours creating a lecture, you better believe I'm going to monetize that because I already spent 3 hours working on it.
Yes.
So let's monetize it and be smarter.
I love that so much. So there's a couple things I want to ask you about, and I want to come back
Yes.
to what you're saying right now, but I don't
Okay.
want to forget to touch on this concept of cultural humility that you talk about
Yes.
in your work.
Yes.
I would love,
Yes.
I've heard the
Yes.
term, I think, but I would love to just,
Absolutely.
what is that, and how do people practice that if they want to be connected to that in their practice and the work that they're doing, even if it's
Absolutely.
diversification of income streams? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, cultural humility is so. I'll rewind a little bit. So, back when I was in the master's program, we focused on the multicultural counseling competencies created by Sue and colleagues, and so that was all I knew was, oh my gosh, I have to be a multicultural competent counselor, and I have to know everything about everyone and every race and ethnicity and all of this, and I felt so overwhelmed, and I just thought this is such a huge responsibility. I remember looking through the framework and just feeling so overwhelmed as a novice counselor, actually a student still at the time, and that was all that I knew. I wasn't introduced to cultural humility until the doctoral program, which I think is extremely, yeah, I think about, I was presenting at NAMI a couple weeks ago and talking about this topic, and they're like, I don't know about this. So I don't think it's something that is really taught too much in the counseling programs. But what I've
Yeah.
noticed is there's a transition between culturally competent and culturally humble. And the idea is that I can never be competent in someone else's culture. I just can't. And even when you read the books and it tells you how to work with people who are Muslim or how to work with people who are black or whatever, it's like no identity is a monolith. And then thinking too, when we bring in topics like intersectionality and knowing that you can hold so many different identities, some privileged, some marginalized, it really gives us permission to not know it all, to
Love
be
that.
open, and that's what I strive to be, is just culturally humble. And my main goal behind that is that I've been in the counseling room with someone that I felt like didn't understand my identities. And I think it's important to know that nobody is immune from what I call cultural ruptures. My therapist at the time was a brown therapist. So I figured, okay, she'll know mostly about me and who I am and all of that. And I remember in the first session, she was telling me to set boundaries with my mom. And my joke is like, I don't know if you've ever met a black mom, but like that is not gonna go down. I choose to see the next day. So, and I have the most loving and sweet mom ever. But I was like, this lady does not understand me, right? She does not
Yeah.
understand me. So, and
That's
I have
great.
made yeah, and I'm like, it's a joke, but it's so true. I have the most loving mom on the planet. I love her to infinity and beyond. And, these concepts are new to her. She's from a different generation. And so I needed to learn, I needed some time and some patience to be able to learn how to set boundaries with my mother, and needed a counselor to understand that. And so cultural humility for me is being able to really be open to learning, being open to cultural ruptures. But I always say, if cultural ruptures are inevitable, I choose to believe that cultural repair is also possible. And I think about, for example, working with a trans client, like if I misgender the client, okay, let me repair that. I made a rupture. Let me
Yes.
repair it. And let's continue to do good work as you continue to feel safe with me, you know? And so that's what it means to me. I will tell you that I go into this in my dissertation topic, so I try not to go too far
Yeah.
into the weeds because I could talk about it all day, but it also touches, it's like a three-pronged approach where it touches on things too, like cultural comfort. How comfortable are you having conversations around culture? And then cultural opportunities. Are you taking those opportunities to be able to have these hard conversations and broach with your client? And when I use the term culture, I also use it very broadly, not just race and ethnicity, but also education status and immigration status and language, thinking about all those different aspects that encompass culture.
That's fascinating. It really is. And
Thank
I
you.
love that model because, I mean, it's
Yes.
so aligned with what you're talking about on the other spectrums with diversification. And
Yes.
I'm not having to see 40 clients a week. And I'm
Yes.
actually giving myself permission to not know it
Yes.
all and to show up
Exactly.
that way. Like you said, humble, show up that way
Exactly.
that I don't know it all. How could I? That's like
Yes.
such an easier way to like go through life. And especially as a
Yes.
therapist, that's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for it, and I'm just grateful for all the pioneers who have come before me to do this really hard work because it's so needed. It's so needed. I think for me it's about early dropouts and knowing that the way I look at it is if clients were dropping out of therapy prematurely because of these cultural ruptures, they're not getting the help that they need. They're staying sick and their communities are staying sick. And for me, that's a huge problem. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this topic.
That's amazing. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
sharing about that.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
now, along those lines and everything else we've been talking about, before we hit record, you and I were kind of talking about tech and how, like, and we like to talk about that on the Berries podcast because, Berries is, AI forward and all of that. And really, we're really into like, how can we use tech in our lives to make our lives easier so we're not burning out, so we can diversify, so we can scale, all of that. So I love if we could shift the conversation about because you were telling me about a really interesting conference you just went to, and I'd love to just talk about it a little bit.
Randomly one night on Instagram when I should have been asleep, I came across I came across a post that was talking about this program or this conference called Inside the Lab with APA Labs. And essentially, APA, they've created what they call a digital badge. And it's really to certify, I guess you could say, yeah, certify your tech program. And it's like,
Nice.
okay, that's great to have the backing of APA. They're behind you. They're saying that you're using evidence-based practices in your tech program, and they even have a readiness program as well that if you're not ready to get the badge just yet, you can sign up for the readiness program. And so I saw that they were putting on a 2-day conference in Austin, and I'm like, hey, that's drivable. Let me go. And I had such an amazing time there. We started on the 30th and we ended on Halloween and on the
Nice.
31st. And it just was amazing. Everyone there were, it was mainly psychologists, but there were a handful of other disciplines there. But there were also investors and funders and other tech folks, engineers. The CEO of APA was there, Dr. Arthur Evans. And so there were some really fantastic people in the room. And we talked about, AI and how to use it responsibly, and scalability was another big topic. Does your program need to be approved through the FDA? Like things I had never thought about. And so really, really forward moving topics. And I enjoyed every bit of it. It was extremely valuable, and I really hope they bring it back next year.
Wow, what an amazing like
Hmm.
experience. I'm gonna have to go research that and learn
Yes.
more about it.
Oh,
It's
yes.
fascinating.
Hmm.
Yeah. I
It
love
was
it.
it was great. Yes. Hmm.
And I love seeing like our accreditation board, like the APA, the, LPC, all of that, the ASWB, like getting on board with AI because still this is one of those mindset things I think with therapists that I see all the time. It's like I'm never using AI. That's ridiculous. The environmental implication, there's just always like objections to using it. And I feel like the burnout prevention and the ease of like that it helps us is like so much more worth like the rest of it. I mean, it just outweighs it, because it can save us in a lot of ways, like from burnout. What is your like AI tech stack look like these days with like scaling and other businesses? Are there like certain tools that you love and you use every day? We'd love to hear about that.
As far as like the tech programs that I'm using, I definitely have been enjoying Perplexity just because I do think it's a little bit more data driven than ChatGPT. I do like to use ChatGPT still because I just think it's helpful. I try to use it with discretion so that I don't impact, my brain elasticity. So just being responsible in the ways that I use it. And then in addition to that, berries. And so being introduced to the berries platform and just how helpful it's been as it relates to writing notes and helping out with treatment planning. I think right now more than ever, therapists really need the burden taken off of them. And I know I personally had days where like I have just enough energy to do my client sessions, but do not have it in me to do admin related things. And so once I found out that berries was HIPAA compliant and that it would keep my clients' information safe, I definitely wanted to use it, but also share more about it with other therapists, including my friends, because maybe once a week I get a note from someone or a text message from someone of like, I'm struggling with getting my notes done. I don't want to upset insurance. I want to make sure they're getting everything that they need. And so I would say berries on the therapeutic end has definitely been another really helpful resource.
Love that so much. Yes. Yeah, it's life-changing to be able to just have your note written. Gosh, why didn't they have this when I was like carrying a full-time caseload?
Exactly. You are so right. And I'm just thinking about some of those super infant EHRs that they had us use, especially at school. And I'm just like, we got to stop this, y'all. We gotta move into, because it's the thing is, and what they talked about at APA Labs is like, AI is not going anywhere. And so instead of fighting against it, we need to be collaborating with the AI folks to make it more responsible and to make it safe and to really make it do what I think it's meant to do, is to make life just a little bit lighter, a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just love that so much. So thank you so much for sharing about all this. Just amazing to talk to you and just learn about what you're doing in your doctoral program and what you're putting out into the world. Thank you a lot. So how do people go about finding you if they want to find you, if they want to?
So I'm pretty much on most social media platforms. On Facebook, I'm at Revive to Thrive Wellness Center. So that's one way that they can find me. On LinkedIn, I'm at Kimberly Parker _ LPC. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. And then I have my website, revive_thrive.com.
Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Absolutely, Kim. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here and just so grateful for the work that you're doing. And just thanks for having me. Absolutely.